Captain John sat quietly in the dark room, staring at the holographic letter in front of him. He had fought in many battles, faced dangerous alien creatures, and even traveled to the edge of the galaxy. But he had never been this confused. The letter was glowing, with the royal seal of the Zorathian king, an alien ruler known for his strict and powerful rule. John had no idea why the king would contact him, a human soldier. John pressed a button on the letter, and a voice began to speak. It was formal and serious. Captain John, you have been chosen as the recipient of a special inheritance from the late king of Zorath. Please attend the Galactic Council meeting tomorrow to claim your inheritance. John blinked. Inheritance? From an alien king? He thought it must be a mistake. Why would a king leave him anything? He wasn't even from Zorath, but his curiosity got the better of him, so he decided to go to the council meeting. The next day, John entered the massive Galactic Council Hall. The room was filled with different alien species, all of them powerful leaders from across the galaxy. Their eyes turned to John as he walked in, some looking curious, others amused. John could hear whispers and quiet laughter around him. He felt a little out of place, but kept walking until he reached the center of the room. A tall, green-skinned alien, one of the council members, stood up and addressed the crowd. Captain John, thank you for joining us. As you may have heard, the king of Zorath left behind an inheritance, and after careful consideration, the council has decided that you, a human, will receive it. The room filled with laughter, but John still didn't understand what was so funny. What did I inherit? He asked, trying to sound calm. The council member smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. You have inherited the Princess Vera, the least desired daughter of the late king. John's eyes widened. A princess? How can a person be an inheritance? The council member laughed again. Princess Vera is no ordinary person. She has been disowned by her own family, and nobody wants to marry her. The king decided to pass her on to someone else in his will, and it seems you are the lucky one. John could see the other council members grinning, enjoying the moment. They thought he would be embarrassed or angry, but instead, John was more curious than ever. Why had the king chosen him? And why was everyone making fun of this princess? What if I refuse? John asked, looking around the room. The laughter grew louder. The green-skinned alien shook his head. You are free to refuse, of course, but by accepting her, you will gain a special title and some valuable resources. Not to mention, you will be helping her find a new home. John didn't like the way the council was mocking him. It was clear they wanted him to say no, but he wasn't ready to give them the reaction they were hoping for. He thought for a moment, then said, I would like to meet her first. The room fell silent. The council members exchanged surprised looks. It was obvious they hadn't expected this response. Most of them thought John would simply refuse and leave. The green-skinned alien tried to hide his shock and said, Very well. If you wish to meet Princess Vera, you may do so. But don't be surprised if she is not what you expect. After the meeting, John was led to a small, quiet room at the back of the council hall. There, he waited for the princess to arrive. He didn't know what to think. Was she dangerous? Was there something wrong with her? The way the council had spoken about her made him wonder if she had some dark secret. A few minutes later, the door opened and a figure stepped inside. She was tall, with pale blue skin and bright, piercing eyes. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, and she wore a simple dress. She looked almost fragile, but her eyes were sharp and alert. John stood up, expecting her to say something, but she remained silent, just staring at him. There was no fear or sadness in her eyes, just a calm, steady gaze. Are you Princess Vera? John asked, breaking the silence. She nodded slowly. Yes, I am. And you are the human who has inherited me. Her voice was soft, but there was a hint of sarcasm in it. John didn't know what to say. He had expected someone who would beg or cry, but this princess seemed different. She was calm, almost distant, as if she didn't care about what was happening. "I didn't ask for this," John said honestly, "but I wanted to meet you before I made any decision." Vera raised an eyebrow. "Most people don't bother. They just say no." John felt a strange sense of respect for her. She wasn't what he had expected at all. He could tell there was more to her story, something the council hadn't told him. "Well, I'm not most people," he said with a small smile. "I'd like to know more about you, if you don't mind." Vera seemed surprised by his words, but she didn't refuse. "If you wish to know the truth, Captain John, you will have to look past the lies of the council. But I warn you, it may not be what you want to hear." John felt a chill run down his spine. For the first time, he realized that this was not just a simple joke. There was something bigger going on, and he was right in the middle of it. But he had never backed down from a challenge before, and he wasn't going to start now. "Then tell me the truth," he said, his voice firm. "I'm listening." A first meeting. Captain John sat in the small room, waiting. He wasn't sure what to expect. The Galactic Council had made it sound like Princess Vera was a problem no one wanted. But John had seen how the council members laughed when they talked about her, and it made him feel like there was more to the story. The door opened, and a guard led Princess Vera inside. She walked slowly, her head held high. She was tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow under the dim light. Her long silver hair fell softly around her shoulders. John thought she looked graceful, but there was also a coldness in her eyes. As the door closed behind her, Vera glanced at John. Her eyes were sharp, like she was studying him. She didn't smile or greet him. She just stood there, silent, waiting for him to speak first. John cleared his throat, feeling a bit nervous. "Hello, Princess Vera. I'm Captain John. I thought we should meet before I make any decisions." Vera's lips curled into a small, bitter smile. "They sent you to see the unwanted princess, didn't they?" she said softly. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of sarcasm in her tone. "I suppose you want to know why nobody wants me." John was caught off guard by her directness. He had expected someone shy or afraid, but Vera was neither. "I want to know the truth," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The council made it sound like you're some kind of problem, but I don't believe everything they say." Vera's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not like the others, then. Most people don't bother to meet me. They just say no and leave." She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his face. "So, what do you want, Captain John?" John could see that she was testing him, trying to figure out if he was like the rest. "I want to understand," he said. "Why did the king choose me to inherit you? Why does the council act like you're a curse?" Vera sighed and turned away, looking out the small window. "Because I am not what they wanted," she said quietly. "I am different, and they don't like that." John watched her, trying to read her emotions. She looked calm, but he could see a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Different how?" he asked. Vera was silent for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to tell him. "I have a gift," she said finally. "A power that my family tried to hide. They thought it made me dangerous, so they kept me away from everyone. And when my father died, they saw a chance to get rid of me for good." John's curiosity grew. "What kind of power?" he asked. Vera turned to face him, her eyes glowing faintly. "It's hard to explain," she said. "I can see things, sense things that others cannot. Sometimes, I can even change things with my mind. But my family was afraid of what I could do, so they pretended I didn't exist." John frowned. "And the council? What do they want from you?" Vera's expression turned cold. "They want to control me, use my power for their own purposes, but they can't do that unless I have a guardian. That's why they want you to refuse. They want to keep me alone and weak." John felt a wave of anger. He didn't like the idea of anyone being treated like a tool, especially not someone who seemed as strong and intelligent as Vera. "I'm not going to be their puppet," he said firmly. If I decide to accept this inheritance, it will be because I think it's the right thing to do, not because they want me to. Vera's eyes softened a little, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely surprised. "You would choose to accept me?" she asked, "even after knowing what I am?" John nodded. "Yes, if it means helping you get away from them. I don't care about their politics. I care about doing what's right." For a moment, Vera just stared at him, as if trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. Then she smiled, a small, genuine smile that made her look less like the cold, distant princess and more like a normal person. "You're a strange human, Captain John," she said. "Most people see me as a problem. But you see me as a person." John felt a sense of relief. He had worried that she would be difficult to talk to, but now he felt like he was starting to understand her. "I'm not like most people," he said. "And I don't think you are either." Vera's smile faded, and she looked down at the floor. "No, I'm not," she said softly. "I have lived my whole life in the shadows, kept away from everyone because of what I can do. Sometimes I wonder if they were right to be afraid of me." John shook his head. "I don't believe that," he said. "I think they were afraid because they didn't understand you, but I want to understand. Will you give me a chance?" Vera looked up at him, her eyes bright and clear. "Maybe," she said, "but if you choose to stay, it won't be easy. The council will try to make you leave. They will do everything they can to separate us." John smiled. "Let them try," he said. "I've faced worse than a bunch of politicians. If they want a fight, they'll get one." For the first time, Vera laughed. It was a light, soft sound, but it made the room feel a little warmer. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Captain John," she said. "But I think I like that." John felt a spark of hope. Maybe this wouldn't be as simple as he thought, but he was ready to face whatever came next. "Then it's settled," he said. "We'll face this together." Vera nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Together," she agreed. Hidden power. Captain John had decided to stay. He didn't care about the council's games or their mocking words. He was more interested in learning the truth about Princess Vera and why everyone seemed so afraid of her. After their first meeting, he knew there was much more to her story, so he spent more time with Vera, trying to understand who she really was. One afternoon, they were walking through the gardens behind the council hall. The place was quiet, with tall trees and colorful flowers. John thought it was peaceful, but Vera seemed tense, like she was always looking for something hidden in the shadows. "Tell me more about your power," John said, breaking the silence. "You said you can sense things, even change things with your mind. What does that mean?" Vera hesitated. She didn't like talking about her abilities. "It's complicated," she said softly. "I was born with this gift, but my family called it a curse. They were afraid of what I could do, so they hid me away." John could see the pain in her eyes, but he didn't interrupt. He wanted her to feel safe enough to share her story. "When I was young, I discovered I could see things other people couldn't," Vera continued. "I could sense people's emotions, even their thoughts, if I focused hard enough. And sometimes, if I tried, I could move things without touching them. It scared my family. They thought I was dangerous." John's eyes widened. "You can read minds." "Not exactly," Vera said. "I don't hear words or full thoughts. It's more like feelings. I can tell when someone is angry or sad or afraid. I can feel it as if it's my own emotion. And sometimes, if I'm close enough, I can see flashes of what they're thinking about." John was amazed. He had never heard of anything like this before. "And what about moving things? How does that work?" Vera looked down at her hands. "It's like my mind reaches out and touches things. If I concentrate, I can make them move, but it's not easy. And it can be dangerous if I'm not careful." John thought for a moment. "That's why they kept you hidden," he said quietly. "They were afraid of what you could do." Vera nodded. "They didn't understand it, so they tried to control me. But it only made things worse. The more they feared me, the more powerful I became. And when I couldn't control my power, they said I was a threat. John could see how much it hurt her to talk about this. He felt angry at the way she had been treated, but he didn't want to show it. Instead, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I don't think you're a threat," he said. "I think you're special. And maybe your power is a gift, not a curse." Vera looked at him, surprised. "You really believe that?" "Yes," John said firmly. "You just need someone to help you understand it, to show you that it's okay to be different. I'm not afraid of you, Vera. And I'm not going to let the council use you." Vera felt a warmth in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. For years, she had been told she was dangerous, that her power made her a monster. But John's words made her feel hopeful. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much that means to me." John smiled, but he still had questions. "If your power is so strong, why do the council want to control you? What are they trying to do?" Vera's expression turned serious. "They want to use my power for their own plans. They think they can control me, but they're wrong. If they push me too far, I could destroy everything around me without meaning to." John felt a chill run down his spine. "Is that why you stay so quiet? So they don't provoke you?" Vera nodded. "I'm afraid of what might happen if I lose control. I've seen it before. When I was younger, I hurt people without meaning to. That's why my family kept me hidden. They thought it was safer for everyone." John understood now why Vera was always so calm, so distant. She was trying to protect everyone around her, even if it meant hiding who she truly was. "You shouldn't have to live like that," he said softly. "You deserve to be yourself, without fear." Vera met his gaze, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in anyone else's. "Trust." "Maybe," she said, "but it's not that simple. The council won't let me go so easily. They see me as a tool, something they can use to gain more power." "Not if I can help it," John said, his voice strong. "I didn't come all this way to let them treat you like an object. If they want to fight, I'll give them one. But I need you to trust me, Vera. Let me help you." Vera hesitated. She had spent so long being alone, afraid to trust anyone. But John was different. He didn't see her as a threat, or a tool, or a problem to be solved. He saw her as a person, someone who deserved a chance to be free. "All right," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll trust you, John. But if things go wrong, promise me you'll protect yourself. I don't want to hurt anyone, especially not you." John's heart ached at the sadness in her voice. "I promise," he said, "but I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." For the first time, Vera felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, with John by her side, she could learn to control her power. And maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to live without fear. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. The council's tricks. Captain John and Princess Vera had grown closer over the past few days. John had learned about her power, and he wanted to help her control it. But he knew they couldn't just ignore the Galactic Council. The council members were powerful, and they weren't going to let Vera go without a fight. One morning, John received a message from the council. They had requested a meeting with him and Vera. The message was polite, but John could sense there was something more behind it. He had seen how the council members acted the last time he was there. They enjoyed mocking him, and they didn't take him seriously. But John knew better than to trust them. When he told Vera about the meeting, she looked worried. "They're planning something," she said. "They wouldn't ask to see us unless they had a plan." "Be careful, John." John nodded. "I will. But we need to hear what they have to say. Maybe we can find out what they're really up to." Later that day, John and Vera entered the council hall. The room was large and impressive, with high ceilings and shining floors. The council members were already there, seated in a semicircle. They watched as John and Vera walked in, their eyes cold and calculating. The green-skinned council member, the same one who had spoken to John before, stood up and smiled. "Welcome, Captain John. Princess Vera. We are pleased to see you both." His voice was smooth, but John could tell it was just an act. "What do you want?" John asked, not bothering with polite greetings. He wasn't here to play games. The green-skinned alien's smile widened, straight to the point. "I like that." He gestured to the other council members. "We have been discussing your situation, Captain John, and we have decided to make you an offer." John frowned. "What kind of offer?" "We understand that you have chosen to stay with Princess Vera," the council member said. "And while we do not agree with your decision, we respect it. However, we cannot allow her to remain uncontrolled. Her powers are too dangerous." John's hands tightened into fists. "She's not dangerous. She's only dangerous if you push her. And I won't let that happen." The council member raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Well, we have a proposal for you, Captain. If you agree to bring Princess Vera to a special training facility, we will allow you to stay with her. There she will be taught how to control her powers, and you will both be safe." Vera's eyes widened. "No," she said, her voice firm. "I know what that place is. It's not a training facility. It's a prison." The room fell silent. The council members exchanged quick, nervous glances. Clearly, they hadn't expected Vera to speak so boldly. John stepped forward. "If she says it's a prison, then that's what it is. I'm not sending her there." The green-skinned council member's smile faded. "You misunderstand, Captain. This is not a choice. It is a demand. If you refuse, we will have to take other measures to ensure the safety of the galaxy." John's heart pounded. He had known the council was planning something, but he hadn't expected them to be so direct. "What kind of measures?" he asked slowly. The council member's eyes turned cold. "We have the power to separate you from Princess Vera permanently, and if necessary, we will use that power. But we do not wish for it to come to that. We are offering you a chance to do the right thing." John felt a surge of anger. They were threatening him, trying to scare him into doing what they wanted. But he wasn't going to back down. "No," he said, his voice strong. "I'm not going to let you lock her up just because you don't understand her. She's not a tool for you to control." The green-skinned alien's smile returned, but it was colder now. "You are brave, Captain, but bravery alone will not protect you. Think carefully about what you are risking." Vera stepped closer to John, her eyes burning with determination. "I'm not afraid of you," she said to the council. "You can threaten us all you want, but I won't be your prisoner. Not anymore." The council members looked at each other, surprised by her defiance. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the green-skinned council member sighed. "Very well. If you will not cooperate, we will have to use other methods." John's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" The council member clapped his hands, and 2 guards entered the room. They were tall, with dark armor and stern expressions. "These guards will escort you both to a holding area," the council member said, "until we can find a more permanent solution." John and Vera exchanged quick glances. They knew they were in trouble, but neither of them was willing to give up. "We're not going anywhere," John said. "Not unless you force us." The green-skinned alien's eyes gleamed. "That can be arranged." The guards stepped forward, but before they could reach John and Vera, the air around them began to shimmer. John felt a strange energy, like a silent hum, and he realized it was coming from Vera. Her eyes glowed faintly, and the guards froze in place, unable to move. "What is this?" the council member stammered, his voice shaking. Vera stepped forward, her expression calm but intense. "I told you," she said quietly. "I'm not afraid of you, and I won't let you hurt him." John watched in awe as the guards remained still, as if held by an invisible force. He had seen Vera's power before, but never like this. She was in control, and she wasn't backing down. The council members looked terrified. They had expected to scare John and Vera, but now they were the ones who were afraid. "Stop this!" the green-skinned alien shouted. "Release them at once." Vera's eyes flickered, and the guard stumbled back, released from her control. But she didn't look away from the council. "If you try to separate us," she said, her voice steady, "I will not be so gentle next time." John stepped beside her, his heart swelling with pride. "You heard her," he said. "We're leaving, and if you try to stop us, you'll regret it." The council members watched in silence as John and Vera walked out of the hall. For the first time, they realized they might have underestimated the strength of their opponents. As they stepped outside, John turned to Vera and smiled. "I think we just made a lot of enemies," he said. Vera smiled back, a hint of relief in her eyes. "Then we'll face them together." A growing bond. After the intense confrontation with the Galactic Council, John and Vera found themselves on the run. They had managed to escape the council hall, but they knew it wouldn't be long before the council sent more guards after them. They needed a place to hide, somewhere they could plan their next move. John had taken Vera to a small, quiet village on a distant planet. The village was hidden among tall mountains, far away from the council's watchful eyes. For the first time in a long while, they felt a sense of peace. But both of them knew it was only temporary. As they settled into their small, cozy cabin, John noticed something. Vera seemed different. She was still quiet, but there was a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She no longer looked like the scared, guarded princess he had first met. She seemed more relaxed, almost like she was beginning to trust him completely. One evening, they sat by the fireplace, warming their hands against the cool mountain air. John glanced at Vera, who was staring into the flames, lost in thought. He could see that she had a lot on her mind, and he wanted to help ease her worries. "You've been quiet," John said gently. "Are you okay?" Vera looked up at him, and for a moment she hesitated. But then she smiled, a small, genuine smile. "I'm okay," she said. "It's just strange being here with you, like this. It feels normal. And I haven't felt normal in a very long time." John understood what she meant. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said. "You deserve to have some peace." Vera's smile grew a little wider, and she looked down at her hands. "You're different, John. You don't look at me like I'm some kind of weapon. You see me as a person." John's heart warmed at her words. "That's because you are a person, Vera. You're more than just your power. You're strong and brave and kind, and I'm lucky to have met you." Vera felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. For years, she had been treated like an outcast, someone to be feared or controlled. But John was different. He saw her for who she truly was, and that made her feel safe. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there. I'm glad you're here with me." John felt a slight blush on his cheeks, but he quickly brushed it off. "I'm glad too," he said. "But we're not out of danger yet. The council won't give up that easily. We need to be ready." Vera nodded, but she didn't look afraid. "I know, but I'm not scared anymore. As long as you're with me, I feel like I can face anything." John was surprised by her words. He hadn't realized how much their bond had grown. But hearing her say it made him feel stronger too. "We'll figure this out," he said. "Together." Over the next few days, John and Vera spent more time together. They would take walks through the forests, exploring the beautiful hidden paths around the village. They would talk for hours, sharing stories about their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. John learned that Vera loved reading, especially old stories about heroes and adventures. She had always wanted to be brave, like the characters in those books, but she had never been given the chance. "You are brave," John told her one afternoon as they sat by a clear, bubbling stream. You stood up to the council. You're fighting for your freedom. That takes more courage than anything." Vera blushed a little, but she didn't disagree. "Maybe you're right," she said, "but I'm still learning, and I still have a lot of fears to overcome." John reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "We all do," he said, "but that's okay. What matters is that we keep trying, and I'll be here to help you, no matter what." Vera felt a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. She looked at John, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that things might get better. "I trust you," she said softly. "I don't know why, but I do. I feel like I can tell you anything." John smiled. "You can. I'm not going anywhere." That evening, as they sat together by the fireplace again, John felt a strange sense of contentment. He hadn't expected to find this kind of connection when he first met Vera, but now he couldn't imagine leaving her. He had promised to protect her, and he intended to keep that promise. Vera leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "John," she said quietly. "Yeah," he replied. "Do you think we'll ever be free? Really free, where we don't have to look over our shoulders all the time?" John thought about her question. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The council was powerful, and they would keep coming after them. But as he looked at Vera, he realized that it didn't matter how hard it would be. As long as they were together, they would find a way. "I think we will," he said, his voice firm. "It might take time, and we might have to fight, but we'll find a way to be free. I promise." Vera closed her eyes, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope for a future where she could live without fear, without hiding. "Thank you, John," she whispered, "for everything." John wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "You don't have to thank me, Vera. I'm just glad I'm here." As the fire crackled softly, and the stars began to shine outside the window, John and Vera sat together, enjoying the quiet moment. They knew there were challenges ahead, but for now, they allowed themselves to be happy, to enjoy the bond that had grown between them. And for the first time, Vera truly believed that she wasn't alone anymore. The council's challenge. Days passed in the quiet village, but John and Vera knew that peace was only temporary. They had grown closer, sharing stories and dreams, but the shadow of the Galactic Council loomed over them. They were still on the run, and the council would not give up easily. One afternoon, as John was sharpening a small knife by the fire, Vera suddenly stood up, her eyes wide with alarm. "John, look!" She pointed to the sky. John looked up and saw a dark shape moving against the bright blue. It was a council ship, large and ominous, descending toward the village. Panic shot through him. "We have to hide," he shouted. Before they could run, the ship landed with a loud thud, and several guards stepped out. They were dressed in black armor, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. John grabbed Vera's hand and pulled her behind a large tree. The guards spread out, searching the area. John's heart raced. "What do we do?" he whispered to Vera. "We need to distract them," she said, her voice low but steady. "I can use my powers to create an illusion. They won't know what's real." John nodded, knowing Vera was strong. "Do it, but be careful." Vera closed her eyes and focused. John watched in awe as the air around them shimmered. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from the other side of the village. It sounded like a giant beast roaring. The guards turned, startled, and rushed toward the sound. "Now," John urged, and they slipped away, staying low to the ground. They ran through the trees, their hearts pounding, until they reached a small cave hidden behind thick bushes. Inside the cave, they crouched down, breathing heavily. "That was close," John said, wiping sweat from his brow. Vera smiled, the thrill of their escape lighting up her face. "We did it, but they will be back. We can't keep running forever." John nodded. "We need a plan. The council won't stop until they have you." Just then, a voice echoed from outside the cave. I know you're in there, Vera. It was the green-skinned council member, the one who had mocked them before. You can't hide forever. Come out and face us. John's heart sank. They found us. Don't worry, Vera said, her voice firm. I can handle this. But we have to make sure they don't take me. John looked into her eyes, filled with determination. What do you have in mind? Vera took a deep breath. I'll create another illusion. I'll make it seem like I'm in the cave, but it will just be an image. You can sneak out and find a way to distract them while I escape. No, John said quickly. We're not splitting up. If something goes wrong, I won't be able to help you. Vera frowned, clearly frustrated. But we can't let them capture me. They'll use me against you. John took her hands in his. I won't let that happen. We'll face them together, no matter what. The voice from outside grew louder. Vera, you're only making this harder on yourself. Come out now, and we can talk. John and Vera exchanged worried glances. They didn't have much time. All right, John said, his mind racing. We need to act quickly. What if we pretend to give in? We can get close to the council members and find a way to turn the tables. Vera hesitated. You think it will work? It has to. If we can get inside the ship, maybe we can figure out a way to disable it or find something to use against them. Vera nodded, her determination shining through. Okay, let's do it. They both took a deep breath and stepped out of the cave, putting on their bravest faces. The council guards immediately surrounded them, weapons drawn. Ah, there you are, the green-skinned council member said, a smug grin on his face. I knew you would come out eventually. Now let's talk about your future. Vera stood tall, her chin raised defiantly. What do you want from us? The council member's smile faded. You know very well what we want. You are a powerful asset, Princess Vera. We need you to control your powers. If you refuse to cooperate, we will have no choice but to take you by force. John stepped forward. You think you can just take her? She's not a tool for you to use. The council member narrowed his eyes. You think you're so brave, human. You don't understand the forces you're dealing with. John clenched his fists, his heart racing. I won't let you hurt her. We'll fight if we have to. The council member laughed, a cold, mocking sound. You think you can fight us? We have the power of the galaxy behind us. You're just one human and a scared princess. Vera felt a surge of anger rise within her. She had always been seen as weak. But now, with John by her side, she felt stronger than ever. I'm not scared anymore, she said, her voice steady. I will fight for my freedom and for John. The council member looked surprised, but then his expression hardened. You are making a grave mistake, Vera. You will regret this. John felt the tension in the air grow thick. He knew they were on the brink of a battle. Bring it on, he said, his voice steady. We're not backing down. As the guards moved closer, John and Vera prepared themselves for whatever was coming. They had faced challenges before, but this felt different. They were fighting for their freedom, for their bond, and for a future where they could be truly free. The council member raised his hand, signaling the guards to advance. But just as they were about to attack, Vera closed her eyes and focused. The air around them began to shimmer, and John felt the familiar hum of her power. I won't let them take me, she said, her voice fierce. Not now, not ever. With that, Vera unleashed her powers, creating a blinding flash of light that engulfed the area. The guards stumbled back, disoriented by the sudden brilliance. Now, John, Vera shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. John sprang into action, ready to fight alongside her. They had come too far to let the council win now. A new path. The blinding light from Vera's powers filled the air, pushing back the guards who had surrounded them. John felt a surge of energy as the brightness enveloped him. It was a moment of clarity, a chance to break free from the council's grip. Let's go, John shouted, grabbing Vera's hand. They dashed away from the stunned guards, weaving through the trees of the village. John could hear the shouts of the council members behind them, but he didn't look back. He focused on the path ahead, where freedom awaited them. As they ran, Vera's power pulsed around them, creating a protective barrier that kept the guards at bay. John could feel her strength growing with every step they took. "Keep pushing," he encouraged. "We're almost there." They reached the edge of the village and spotted a rocky hill leading to a higher ground. "Up there," Vera pointed. "We can see what they're doing from above." John nodded, and they climbed the hill quickly, moving as fast as they could. When they reached the top, they stopped to catch their breath. The view stretched out before them, showing the council ship still hovering above the village, surrounded by guards. "They won't stop until they find us," John said, scanning the area. "We need a plan." Vera looked worried but determined. "I can create another illusion to confuse them, but we need to use it wisely. We can't keep running forever." As they watched the guards frantically search the village, an idea sparked in John's mind. "What if we turn their own game against them? We can create an illusion that makes it look like I'm surrendering. It might buy us enough time to escape." Vera's eyes widened. "That's risky. They might think you're weak and take you captive. I won't let them hurt you." "I'll be okay," John assured her, his heart steady. "As long as you're safe, I'll take the chance. Besides, you'll be right there with me. We'll keep our eyes on each other." Vera took a deep breath, contemplating the plan. "All right, but we have to be quick. If we wait too long, they'll catch on." With their plan set, Vera focused her energy, and a shimmering light began to swirl around John. As the glow enveloped him, he felt his confidence rise. "Let's do this," he said, his voice strong. When the illusion was ready, John stepped forward, waving his arms to get the guards' attention. "I surrender," he shouted, putting on his best acting. "I will come quietly." The guards stopped, surprised by the sight of him standing alone, hands raised in defeat. The council member who had mocked them before stepped forward, a triumphant look on his face. "You see, the human knows he cannot win. Come, John. You will regret your choices today." John tried to keep his expression neutral as he moved closer, staying aware of Vera's position behind him. He could feel her energy building, ready to spring into action at any moment. As he got closer to the guards, John spotted the council member's eager grin. "You think you are clever, but you are nothing without her," the council member sneered, pointing at the trees where Vera was hidden. "Now that you are here, we will finally put an end to this charade." Suddenly, Vera unleashed her power. The illusion she created of John began to shimmer and fade, revealing the new layer. "No, this is not what you think," she shouted, stepping into view with her powers blazing. The council guards stumbled back in shock, their faces reflecting fear. "You thought you could capture us so easily." Vera's voice rang out, filled with strength. "We are not your pawns." The guards looked at each other, unsure of how to react. It was a moment of hesitation, and John knew it was their chance. "Now," he yelled, and they both charged forward. Vera used her powers to create a barrier of light that blocked the guard's path. John moved with her, their teamwork seamless. Together, they fought against the council guards, their movements a mix of power and agility. "Keep pushing," John encouraged as they faced off against the guards. Vera's abilities swirled around them, creating waves of energy that knocked the guards back. John felt alive, his heart racing with each step they took. As they fought, John realized how much they had grown. Vera was not just a princess, she was a fierce warrior. She had found her strength, and it was incredible to see. After a fierce battle, they managed to push through the guards, escaping the immediate threat. "We did it," John breathed, panting heavily as they raced toward the edge of the forest. But just as they thought they were safe, a loud voice echoed behind them. "You can't escape. The council will hunt you down." John and Vera paused, looking back to see the council ship rising higher into the sky. "They won't stop," Vera said, her voice trembling with concern. "What do we do now?" John took a moment to gather his thoughts. "We need to find allies. We can't face the council alone. There are other planets, other beings that may help us." Vera nodded, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Yes, we'll seek out those who have also been wronged by the council. Together, we can build a new path, one where we are not afraid." As they continued through the forest, John felt a new sense of purpose. They were no longer running from their past. They were forging a future. With Vera by his side, he knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. They left the village behind, stepping into the unknown, ready to find a way to unite others against the council. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they felt hope growing within them, lighting their path forward. Together, they would not only survive but thrive.